The Imani Winds is one of the world's great woodwind quintets and has been adding new works by underrepresented voices to the repertoire for Woodwind Quintet through commissions and advocacy for over 2 decades. And I'm so pleased to have with us today all 5 members of the Imani Quintet. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves just quickly to our audience, if we can start with the if we can start with the 2 original members first.
Hello, my name is Toyin Spellman Diaz, and I'm the oboist of Imani Winds.
Hello, my name is Monica Ellis, and I am the bassoonist of Imani Winds.
Gentlemen.
Hi, my name is Mark Dover, and I'm the clarinetist of Imani Winds.
Hello, my name is Kevin Newton, and I am the hornist of Imani Winds.
Hi everyone, I'm Brandon Patrick George, and I am the flutist of Imani Winds.
Great, thank you so much for introducing yourselves. We're so enthusiastic to have this wonderful program, not just of a Woodwind Quintet, but actually of a nonet. And I thought maybe we could actually start with what's actually at the end of the program, this the nonet by Roberto Sierra. And I was just wondering if some of you could just say a few words about the piece and sort of how this commission sort of came to be and how this piece came to be and how you came to decide to collaborate with the Catalyst Quartet on this work.
The Roberto Sierra nonet will forever live in my memory, especially because I remember when we premiered it, I was pregnant with my now 12-year-old daughter. So it has a special place in my heart because it just came about at a very auspicious time in my personal life. But the nonet by Roberto, Concerto de Cámara, was a piece that we commissioned as a part of a program that we started on our 10th anniversary, which was called the Legacy Commissioning Project. And in the Legacy Commissioning Project, we did exactly what you said in your beautiful intro. We started to commission works very actively by composers of color. And so Roberto was maybe the third or fourth out of what we thought was going to be just 10 commissions. But we went on to commission many, many more pieces by the likes of Wayne Shorter, Jason Moran, and classical luminaries such as, well, no, he's not classical, but Henry Threadgill. We've done also works by Alvin Singleton, just a fantastic array of amazing composers, just trying to breathe new life into what is a hundreds of year old ensemble, traditional ensemble, and not unlike the string quartet or the brass quintet, piano trio. We were just trying to expand the sounds that were coming out of our horns from what we learned in conservatory. And so Roberto's piece was, we wanted to commission a piece for a string quartet plus wind quintet, because we were getting a lot of offers from festivals to come and play. And they wanted to know repertoire that we could do for wind quintet plus string quartet, because when you go to a festival, there are different groups who come together and they work on things together. So there just weren't that many nonets. And so we had this list of people we were going to commission, and we thought Roberto would just knock it out of the park because he's such a versatile musician. He's written some of the most famous works for orchestra of the 2000s for sure and beyond by a composer of color. He was just like the it guy. So we're just so happy to land him to write us anything. And then we had this special project we wanted to do, and he just killed it. He just killed it dead. It's an incredible piece.
It is such a fantastic piece, and it's kind of a monumental one for that size ensemble. It's really great that you guys are doing it. And had you when did you perform this first with the Catalyst Quartet, and how did that come about, that particular collaboration?
I'll tackle this one. We performed it right before the pandemic in the fall of 2019, and honestly, we had several concerts slated for 2020, as most artists did. That we're happy to say have mostly been rescheduled for this season that we're in right now. But we premiered it, I believe, at Penn State University in September 2019, and the collaboration with them really comes from another piece that is going to be a part of the Library of Congress series, a nonet by Jessie Montgomery, who is, of course, such an incredible composer in her own right and really making some awesome waves these days. And she's the former violinist of the Catalyst. And the idea of working with them is really just an extension upon this idea of stretching the thoughts and ideas of what can we do in addition to playing and in the wind quintet. 97% of the time we function as Imani Winds, but it's that extra 3% that really is it really means so much when we do get a chance to have these particular special projects come about. And the Catalyst, we've kind of known them just as friends and folks out there doing the daggone thing, as they say. And it was Jessie. The idea of Jessie writing a piece for the nonet is what started the entire process of this collaboration. And then the fact that we had another piece that already existed rounded out the program. So it was somewhat of a means to an end. So yeah, we premiered it back then, and it was through Music Accord, the collaboration consortium, the consortium that comes together to really sponsor commissions. And we were off to the races with this great concert until the pandemic hit, and then we had to let it shut down for a moment. But now we're back up to it, so it's exciting. In fact, we're here at Virginia Tech. I don't know if we've said this already, but we're performing the project on Thursday.
Oh, okay,
So
wonderful.
This is a stop on the tour that it actually features this very collaboration. So it has a lot of legs to it. I think it really speaks to people. Jessie's piece is the heart and soul of the program, and we sort of. We start the program by ourselves. The Catalyst play a piece by themselves, just as we're doing with the Library of Congress program, virtual program. And then it's her piece that really kind of just brings it home emotionally. And then the Roberto Sierra piece rounds out the program when we're playing it in its entirety. And it's just a powerhouse to end the whole set.
And this is the Immigration Music of Change program. Is this
correct? Yes.
That's exciting. I'm glad that we wish that we could have had everybody in person. Our protocols so far won't allow us to have as much live music as we'd like to, but we'll look forward to that in the future. But
absolutely.
Well, speaking of Virginia Tech, the ensemble is very much involved in innovative educational activities. Would you mind to just say a few words about what you've been up to so far this season and any maybe interesting projects, both performance and educational wise, that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I guess I could speak just to our commitment of outreach in general to start off, and then maybe I'll pass the torch. Just pretty much every city that we visit, whether it's a university like Virginia Tech this week, or whether it's a chamber music presenter, we have a commitment to doing some type of outreach. So it kind of always goes hand in hand with any recital that we give or any concert that we give. We always make sure that we are trying to visit the school systems in the local towns that we are playing in. Sometimes it's retirement communities. So we've played in homeless shelters, lots of different things, and we just feel like Imani has always been committed to that since well before I joined And in fact, a lot of the early opportunities for the group were kind of educational and outreach based initiatives. So it's kind of part of the DNA of the ensemble, and I think we take a lot of pride in that, and also we take that stuff really seriously. We try to always bring it with the same passion that we would like on stage in a major hall. So it's kind of, I think, for me, like some of the best work that I do is the outreach. And so just today, actually, we're playing at a high school here in Blacksburg. So it's a continuous thing. In terms of things that are happening this year, I can maybe talk about one thing, and that's one thing that we're doing is we're working with the Kaufman Center in New York City as one of several ensembles in residence. And so part of that is working with their Face Music initiative, which is a kind of a youth orchestra / new music based program for young kids, and doing work at their school called the Special Music School. So that's really exciting because actually, one of the things that's tough is that we don't get to do a lot of work in New York City, which is where we all live, in the area. So we're always on the road doing outreach, but we don't get that often. We often don't get a chance to kind of pay it forward to people in our own community. So I'm particularly excited about that.
In addition to the outreach things that we have, and we are always on the road visiting schools, whether it be elementary schools, high schools, college, schools of music, and conservatories. But every year in New York City, we actually do have the opportunity to have students come to us and to work with us in New York City at our Chamber Music Festival, the Imani Winds Chamber Music Festival. It's a great program that is now, I think, in its 11th year. And unfortunately, as with many things due to the pandemic, we had to move those things online. But it really gave us an amazing opportunity to stay connected with young people who are working hard at their instruments and learning chamber music and creating new work. It was really special for us. But in normal times, and in this coming year, it'll resume. It takes place in New York City. It's 11 days. Students come and we pair them in chamber groups. Some of them come as preformed ensembles, actually. There are composers who come as composer fellows, and they write pieces for the ensemble. So it's a really unique opportunity for students to have the opportunity to already get started with understanding collaboration and commissioning, right? And what it's like to work one-on-one with the composer. There are entrepreneurial workshops, the business of music. There are individual master classes on each instrument. We all give lessons. We all do chamber music coachings. It's a really jam-packed 11 days that's really special. And students come from all over to really experience not only Imani Winds and what we offer when we're on tour across the country, but also to take advantage of coming to New York and experiencing New York for 11 days. So that's a really special thing. And it's been really great that despite the pandemic, that we found ways to stay connected with young people through the virtual offerings.
Okay. Oh, I'm curious. For the Chamber Music Festival, is it mostly woodwind brass focused, or is it for all instruments?
That's a great question. Generally, it is focused on woodwind instruments. We do have some brass players that do come. We've had brass players. I think there have been some saxophonists. There have been string players that come. And because there's an emphasis on new music and collaboration, we do find new works that they can explore together. And I think the beautiful thing, again, by having these composers in residence, if you will, they're able to have pieces written for them to perform at the festival.
I have another question for you with respect to the pandemic and how I know how closely you work with composers, especially student composers and others that in terms of helping them to understand how to write for winds, especially in a chamber ensemble. Were you able to still explore that on the virtual side of things over the course of the pandemic, or how did that aspect work out? There's nothing quite like being in person and being able to get that feedback in person, but how did that work for you?
I can think of when we were last last year, well, now we're at Virginia Tech, so we're actually doing these things in person again, which is great. But last year we actually had a residency with University of Texas, Austin, which was a really fantastic experience where it was about a month long, and every week we did a handful of activities with the students. And one thing that really stands out in my mind was the students performing their own arrangement of works for Woodwind Quintet. Now, something that the group has championed for many years, in addition to commissioning and adding new works, is transcriptions, having composers arrange great masterworks for the Woodwind Quintet. And what was really fascinating is that there was a fantastic quintet at UT Austin that actually played for us their own transcription of the Firebird Suite, which is really, really exciting. So it was great that they were in a concert hall together, that they could actually play for us. And then there were also videos that they would share on Zoom, and we could offer feedback that way. So not only about how they played, but also about how they arranged it for the different instruments. And I thought that that was really, really something that was special. So, you know, despite the fact that we couldn't be there in person, that there were still ways that we could give them feedback and still, you know, have that impact.
Okay. So I did notice this year that you all released a new album, and I don't want to mispronounce the album. Is it Bruits? Is that how it's pronounced?
Well,
it's very close.
Yeah.
Or Wheats?
Sorry.
It sounds Dutch a little bit.
It actually has multiple ways it can be said. So you're right. All of those things are right. The way we kind of chose to the pronunciation we chose to use for a few reasons is Broots, Broots phonetically, and that's kind of Broots, the Americanized version of it. But Bui would be the French spelling pronunciation of it. Yeah. So we checked with it's a medical term, and we actually kind of did some cross-checking with a few physicians in our circle and got a different answer every time we discussed it. And so the idea of Brutes, of using that particular pronunciation, lended itself to us the double meaning of something that is harsh, or that is you know, powerful, but in a sort of a negative way, because it does the word does have a difficult connotation to accept. So yeah. So anyway, that is just to tackle that very first question. It does have pronunciations.
Well, yes, I have not yet listened to the album yet. I'm actually going to listen to it, but I did see the trailer, and it sounds like a very interesting program and very interesting music that you guys have assembled for it. And I was wondering if you would want to say any words about it, just because it's, you know, there's some composers that I was not aware of. So it sounds like a very interesting album.
I'll first say that you failed the test there. You didn't listen to it yet. What?
I have not listened to it. No, I need to. I know. I need to give.
You're like, it's totally fine. It's of course there's so many people.
It's going to be the first thing I do when I get off this Zoom with you all.
That's right. Now that you've been reprimanded.
Yes.
So we are honored to have these pieces, not just by Fred Jeske, the recently late Fred Jeske. He died during the pandemic. Vijay Iyer and Rina Esmail on this piece. We're also honored that they wrote works that kind of tied together so beautifully, which is why we put them on the same album. So if you don't mind, I'll just tell you a little bit about each of them and you'll see what I mean. So the first one, the title track, Roots, that piece, and all of the pieces really, speak to the times that we live in. And Brutes means the sound that blood makes going through a blocked blood vessel or artery. So all of these pieces kind of spoke to the idea of how we are blocked and how we can become unblocked as a society. So the first piece, the title track, Brutes, is about the murder of Trayvon Martin and the trial that went along with his murder, and how the stand your ground law was used as a reason for the exoneration of the guy who did the murdering. So that's the one piece. And then it's a sextet for piano plus wind quintet. Another thing that we're often asked to do is a sextet plus a wind quintet. And I don't know how many different pianists we can use, though, because it calls for a lot of improv and a killer virtuoso pianist. We originally thought, I'm sorry, I'm going into too much detail on this, but this is the title track. But we originally wanted Vijay, who wrote the piece, to play along with us. We're like, Vijay, can you play with us? And he said, no, it's going to be too hard for me. But he didn't. He can do other things like that. The Corey Smythe, the pianist we have on there, but it's not written for a jazz pianist. It's written for a classical pianist first who can improvise, which is what we got so beautifully with Corey Smythe. So that's that piece. Rina Esmail wrote a piece called "The Light Is the Same," and "The Light Is the Same" is based on a poem by Rumi. This is Library of Congress, so we'll talk about that. And the poem, I'm going to paraphrase a bit, is, but the lights, okay, I can't remember, but it basically our interpretation of what it was that there's stars in the heavens, or the heavenly celestial bodies are looked at by everyone in the world, but there are so many cultural interpretations of what they are. And we asked her to write this piece for the 100th anniversary of the writing of Gustav Holst's The Planets, and to have a completely different perspective, cultural perspective, racial, country identification with the same heavenly bodies. And so she produced The Light Is the Same. It's really a beautiful piece. And then the last piece by Fred Jeffsky, we commissioned with the help of Duke University, who was celebrating the 100th birthday. I guess the number 100 came up a lot in this too. The 100th birthday of a historian by the name of John Hope Franklin. And John Hope Franklin was a wonderful Reconstruction historian from right after the Civil War, and African-American man. And he did a lot, his focus on the academic side or the research on that time led him to be very helpful to many, many different countries and societies who were looking to reconcile. And so a lot of what he did was, well, first of all, he was very involved in the civil rights movement, but he went to other countries and spoke on this idea of how to build an equitable society. And so Frederick Jeffsky wrote his piece for that. And that piece was for wind quintet plus, and there's one movement with a singer in it. And usually when we go on the road, I sing it. But because it was an album, and we wanted to bring a star in, we brought this amazing singer in to sing that movement with poetry by Langston Hughes. And in the first movement, there is a part that has a narration that usually our horn player does. And so for the recording, we brought in John Hope Franklin Jr. to read his father's words at the beginning. So that was an incredibly powerful work. So that's what's on Brute. So you can see like this kind of like intention to how you put pieces together and how they tell, how they both hold a mirror to and shine a light on our society. That's the kind of work we're working on now. Even as a wind quintet, classical music wind quintet, I don't know about you guys, but often I wonder what on earth I see the world and I'm like, what can I do as an oboist? Like, how can I make a difference? And so we're trying our best to make intentional moves with our programming, with who we see, with our commissioning, with how we speak to people from the stage, all the stuff to kind of bring us all together and make steps towards an equitable and just society. And what an amazing world that we can do that with a wind quintet. It's pretty cool.
There were very few, if not any at all, woodwind quintets that were professionally working woodwind quintets, I think, or that have lasted the test of time like you guys have. And you just keep commissioning new works and just doing very dynamic things, and it should really be commended. So I'm really glad that we're able to have you. Unfortunately, not live in person, but we're glad that we're able to at least present this project virtually.
Oh, and may I say, I'm from Washington, D.C., and I spent a lot of time at the Library of Congress. So for me personally, this is a wonderful personal journey to be there. I had a friend who worked at Library of Congress. It's a special place for me. So I'm really personally honored that we're doing this, even virtually. It's amazing.
Thank you. David, do you want to say anything or ask anything?
Well, I'm just wondering if you could tell us a bit more about your collaboration with Jason Moran and the work, Kane, that you're also doing on this program.
Jason Moran, yes, he is a dear friend of ours, a dear friend of the group. So going on over 10 years ago now, we yet again had an idea as a part of the Legacy Commissioning Project to work with Jason. Toyin went to school with him. We played at his wedding even. And so, yeah, we've been friends for a really long time, admired his incredible work as a soloist, as a band leader. And the idea of using, we often say underrepresented composers, but in this case, Jason certainly wasn't that at all. He, has a career that is outstanding. But we did think about also not just composers that you might not have heard of, but how about composers that have never written for the quintet? And that being a particular platform, a voice that we wanted to be heard, and composers of other idioms. We've already talked about Wayne Shorter writing for us. Paquito de Rivera has written for us. So, of course, he's from the classical world, but still, not just classical. Jason, we asked him to write a piece, and he immediately thought about these same ideas that Toyin is speaking of. What's bigger than himself? What is a story that needs to be told? And he is a storyteller, really, in his music anyway. So he decided to write a piece based on an ancestral matriarch of his, and the life that this woman led. She was believed to be a slave from Togo, and came, of course, to this country as an enslaved person, and bore children for her slave master. And though even through those horrific acts during her life as a slave, she actually was eventually freed and went about the business of freeing her children. So one of the movements of Kane actually represents each of the children that she was able to eventually free through being an innovative businesswoman in her own right. Her name was Marie Therese Kwan. And many people in the Houston and Louisiana area can actually trace their roots back to this woman. And Jason is from Houston. So each movement kind of represents different snapshots of this woman's life. And Kane itself represents the Kane River that runs through the town that she lived in, called Nagadish, Louisiana. And again, folks in that town know that name, know this story, and he thought it's so compelling that how about I write the wind quintet that Imani Winds is asking me to write about this story. And the final movement of it actually represents his own life. It's called Nagadish to New York, and kind of just continues the thread. It continues the lineage of this woman's life, her children that she was able to free, and then all the way up through present day. So it's one of our favorite pieces. We've been playing it all these years quite consistently. We recorded it, and it's something that is absolutely longstanding and has just a statement to be made. And that's when, that's a testament to a great piece. When I think it can live in a lot of different programs. It has its own personality to it in a lot of ways. And so we love that we were able to put it on this program, because it does continues this story about migration and even immigration, forced immigration, if you will, and what that all means. So yeah, it's a great piece, and we're always happy to perform it.
Thank you for that. I have on a completely different tack. I just have a question for Kevin. When it comes to a lot of times the programs that get done for Wind Quintet, there's always the issue of endurance and things like that come up, especially with horn parts and stuff that can be, very much, and you have to be careful about how I imagine one has to be careful about how you're organizing your programs and stuff. How have you, how has that been? Have composers been responsive? Has this been an issue at all? Maybe it's not even an issue, but is this something that that comes up a lot in your work with composers with the quintet?
So that's a consideration for both the horn and the oboe a lot of the time. The endurance factor is such a physical exercise, especially on the embouchure. The orbicularis oris muscles are very small, and they can get taxed very easily. And so, honestly, if we're talking about programming, I think that the programs build themselves based on what the idea is that is trying to be gotten across. And then it's a process of finding the pieces that fit into that idea, or starting with a base piece and moving from that. And then the physical part of that is secondary, for sure. Definitely the idea is the more important thing. The program doesn't start thinking about endurance. But it's definitely an open conversation that goes on all the time, that I feel welcomed always to say, okay, maybe I need a break here, or can we switch this piece here or there. But honestly, it hasn't been a problem. It has not been an issue. The expectation was set, and you practice. And then there was the only instance that I've had thus far, because I joined the group almost 7 months ago now. So I've only had one opportunity to actually work with a composer on a piece that was actually used in a program that we're performing in the season, which was Natalie Joachim's Scene. And the horn, each movement is based on, at least idea-wise, is based on an object or a place or something that it's important to each of the members of Imani Winds when the piece was written. So the movement that's the horn movement was actually written for Jeff. But when we workshopped the piece, I was playing the piece, and yes, absolutely, there's always an open door kind of way of working through these things that, and Natalie, for example, was particularly accommodating. She's a wonderful flutist herself and a singer, so she understands a lot of the things that we might be going through, and was willing to make accommodations for us in that way. And I would imagine that would be the normal process, that somebody comes to you with something and you do it, you try and bring it to life, but in the rare case that there would be something that's like not reasonable or genuinely unplayable, I think then probably the answer would be, okay, we're going to do it until it until it doesn't work still. But then I don't imagine that that's ever been a real issue, and certainly not in working with Natalie.
Oh, sure. Well, I imagine there's a difference between putting together a recording where you have some space around it and you can focus on one piece at a time, versus, say, doing a marathon concert with all the pieces. That's got to be also a different kind of challenge. But it sounds like you have that all. It also it reminds me of there's a number of these pieces that get composed for kind of iconic groups, and I consider Imani to be an iconic group, where they do have these labels for movements that are names, and it can create a bit of a awkwardness for for players who are doing performing the piece that are not the original members of that group or something. This is kind of one of those things that happens, I guess. But
yeah, and talking even style, the Woodwind Quintet, the writing for the Woodwind Quintet has changed significantly, largely in part to Valerie Coleman and Jeff Scott, who pushed the ensemble into new directions, changing the expectations of what the instrumentalists are able to do. And that's something that I've felt particularly this year, working with the students at Curtis, who some of them are playing pieces by composers that write idiomatically in styles that they are not used to playing in. And it becomes a very great challenge for them and for us to explain why the music should feel a certain way and to encourage them to free themselves from their preconceived notions about what their instrument should sound like or what a certain kind of passage should sound like. But it's true that when you have when you have a really a sound that is made over time, which Imani Winds has cultivated a sound that's different from any other ensemble on the planet, and it's largely that they have had so much success in the past that I get to be a part of now as a new person. But it does become sort of an issue, but that's kind of the game with all music, because we're playing pieces that have been written by people that have been dead for a very, very long time. A lot of those pieces were written for very specific players, and we can't say we're not going to play this music because it belongs to Joseph Lightgib. It doesn't. It belongs to all of us. And that's the mission, the aim and the focus of Imani Winds, is to make meaningful connections through music. And so that's what we strive to do always.
Oh, well, that's very well said. Very well said. And I think that's a wonderful exclamation point on which to end this lovely interview. It's really been a pleasure to see all of you, even though it's through Zoom. And I'll speak for myself. I really hope that we're able to have you in the library in person sometime soon.